Oonan's Perturbations, written by RichardHaia. Chapter 1. A head start. In the air. It still floated. Spun. Simply flew forward. A severed human head. Oonan, the one who had set it on this rising and swirling trajectory, watched it for a moment without much emotion, more with scientific curiosity. Heads, even the foolish ones, contrary to popular belief, aren't hollow. And they do weigh something. Usually it takes a good amount of force to send a freshly severed head on a longer journey against the laws of gravity. Otherwise, they fall straight to the ground with a dull thud and just get underfoot. Oonan was an experienced warrior. He knew the value of a balletic preparation for battle, and how much the work of one's legs mattered when locked in combat. A warrior burdened with battle gear was highly unstable. In such moments, legs could very well decide whose head would remain attached and whose wouldn't. Better to have your enemy's head off your mind and off the ground than trip over it and lose your own. So far, Oonan, who had mastered the art of whirling his impressively long sword into a deadly dance, had won every such duel. In fact, it had become such a routine that boredom began to creep in. More and more often he caught himself wondering whether he should spare the poor soul whose head was about to take flight. Of course, that would have been quite the exaggeration. There's no room for human feelings on the battlefield, especially since those men didn't show much feeling on any field at all. Besides, such behavior wouldn't sit well, not only with the enemy, but, far worse, with his own men. And fending off those behind your back was far trickier. That's why Oonan invented his own personal sport, setting long-distance records for head throws. Whenever the situation allowed, he tracked them closely and placed silent bets with himself. Would it be 6 feet this time, or 28? In his defense, it must be clearly stated, Oonan was a barbarian. Not only was he no exception among his peers, but also perfectly ordinary for his time. For those were cruel days indeed. And besides, the head belonged to a true scoundrel, one who, with all his villainy, had thoroughly earned his fate. The head finally fell. "New record!" Oonan announced aloud, and the men behind him erupted into cheers, shouting, "Oonan's our man! Oonan for king of the world! Oonan and his mighty sword!" Oonan was not amused. "Who am I even dealing with?" he thought. "Utter savages!" And when the dust of battle settled, when the looting of the fallen began, he quietly slipped away, first to a safe distance, then farther still, until no one could see him anymore, and none of those fierce warriors, among whom Oonan had been the fiercest, ever saw him again. Most of them didn't even live to see the next summer. After all, being a warrior, especially there and then, was a high-risk profession. And so, Oonan decided to change careers. He would become a singer, a bard, as they called them back then. What he didn't realize was that he had absolutely no ear for music, no voice, and that his singing could do even more harm than his sword ever had. But ignorance is bliss, and fools don't worry about things they know nothing about. And so Oonan set off, in the highest of spirits. He feared no one and nothing. It was the world that would soon learn true fear. Fear of his singing.